Hello, my dear friends. So we will start now Sociology Uncomplicated series, Lecture 7. And from now onwards, the real sociology will begin. Why so? Because you will study now the main thinkers and you will study the different facets of the society. In the previous lectures, those were mainly introductory and were discussing the various methods and trends. After this lecture, you will find a linkage until I will finish this entire course, Sociology Uncomplicated series. So today I'm going to discuss one of the most loved and one of the most hated thinker of sociology. And he's not just a thinker of sociology, but he has one of the most profound impact as a sociologist on the entire world. So much so that his book, Das Kapital and Communist Manifesto, were banned in so many countries, and still it is banned in so many countries. Why so? We will try to understand the entire theory of Karl Marx, the relevance of theory of Karl Marx, and the criticism as well. We will understand why this sociological thinker is loved and hated both at the same time. Now, before understanding the theory of Karl Marx, let's understand his early childhood and intellectual upbringing. What made Karl Marx stand out? So, when Karl Marx was a child, he was very inquisitive and he attended a Lutheran elementary school, but later became an atheist and materialist. A break that shaped the entire direction of his thought. He was a non believer and he gave reasons for it. In 1835, he enrolled at a Bonn University now, to study law, but found himself far from drawn to philosophy and literature than to legal training. A year later, he moved to the University of Berlin, where he joined a circle of brilliant radical thinkers challenging existing structures, existing institutions, ideas, religion, philosophy, ethics, and politics all came under scrutiny of Karl Marx. He completed his doctoral degree in 1841. Now, after university, Marx turned to writing and journalism to support himself. And in 1842, he became editor of the liberal colony newspaper. But the Berlin government banned it. From here, the journey of Karl Marx books, publications, and getting banned started. He then moved to Brussels, Belgium, where he founded the German Workers' Party and became active in the Communist League. It was here that he wrote his most famous book, that is the Communist Manifesto. And after being exiled from both Belgium and France, Marx finally settled in London, where he lived as a stateless exile for the rest of his life. In London, Marx supported himself through again journalism, writing for both German and English publications. And from 1852 to 1862, he was a correspondent for the New York Daily Tribune, producing almost 350 plus articles in that period alone. Throughout this time, he continued developing his theories, which you all will read in this class about society, about economics, about politics, while actively campaigning for socialism as well. Marx's thought was shaped by three major currents. What are those? The first is the dialectical method and historical orientation of George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel. Hegel had a profound impact. We will study what was the theory of Hegel to understand how Karl Marx took the theory of Hegel and then changed it according to his own perspective. Then the classical political economy of Adam Smith and David Ricardo. And third is the French socialist and sociological thought. So all these three impacted Karl Marx. Though Marx remained relatively unknown in his own lifetime, that's a really strange thing. His ideas exerted enormous influence, and you can see left, right, and center anywhere you go. Recently, there are protests happening, and you can see his ideas being manifested even in the protests happening in the 21st century all across the world. He has been described as one of the most influential figures in human history in a 1999 BBC poll. He was voted Thinker of the Millennium. Why so? Why his theories have such a huge impact that it can sway people to do revolutions and even wage armed rebellion against the state? What is there that gives people this kind of emotion? So, when he was young, he was a part of the young Hegelians. In the late 1830s, a group known as the Young Hegelians, they offered the radical criticism of the existing socio-political conditions, drawing on and pushing beyond the philosophy what was given by Hegel. And this was the group with which Marx became formally associated while studying law and philosophy at the University of Berlin. Now, Hegel's own philosophy was very humanist in orientation. It treated humanity as occupying a special central place in the entire historical process, that is, directly challenging the supernatural being of human and human being dictated by religion and the people who are controlling churches, temples, and mosques, and saw the whole point of history as the improvement and fulfillment of the human spirit. Now, Hegel's ideas dominated German intellectual life, and they were so much interested in his theories because his theories were liberating. It was not orthodox. Liberating means it was trying to provide freedom to human to think beyond what is being taught to them in the schools, in the family, in the society. That's why his ideas appeal a lot of young people, because young people have that kind of energy to change the structure, to change the system. The people, the young people have the energy to see beauty in majority of the things and even see the flaws in the structure and the society. They are filled with energy. So at that point of time, Hegel inspired a lot of people. Marx was one among them who approached much of Hegel's scheme, especially in his early writings. Now let's understand what was the theory of Hegel, the dialectics of history. Now let's understand it. Let's give the example of Indian history. The thesis is something which was going on. Before the Britishers came, the Indian culture was profoundly based on the mythological stories and the scriptures. That is the thesis. Say, for example, now the antithesis is Britishers. They came, they spread it, the Western education, Western ideas, liberalism, and the Western thoughts. Now, this is antithesis. Out of this was a new idea that emerged. That idea was mix of both the ideas of Indian culture and the Western thoughts. And that became a sort of syncretic culture. So now if you see what kinds of clothes you wear, you are not entirely wearing traditional clothes or you're not entirely wearing Western clothes. It's kind of a fusion. You are coupling your jeans with the traditional kurta, you are coupling your kurti with the jeans and all of this, and it is manifested in all the spheres. This is a synthesis. So one idea is now challenged by another idea. Now, out of the dialectical relationship, the two ideas will impact each other and create another idea. That is called a synthesis. And that was the beautiful idea given by Hegel. Hegel gave ideas prominence, intellectual ideas prominence. Now, Hegel was, that is why, one of the most influential thinker at that point of time. Hegel offers a helpful analogy that I explained you, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. Okay, now the interesting point is how this theory will be picked up by Karl Marx. That's our main point of contention. Okay, and Hegel was of the firm belief that what humans being essentially are will never be fully expressed if their capacity for development is restricted or inhibited by circumstances. Now, circumstances, if I tell you, if you are born in Indian society and you are a woman born in a Dalit community, a soil depressed community, your ideas, your capacity is not being able to fully realize. Why so? Because of the social strains and circumstances and social closure. You will not gain the same kind of opportunities to realize your freedom. This is what has been explained by Professor Amartya Sen as a capability theory. Like, state may provide you reservation, but what about the capability to realize that reservation? Are you being provided a quality education in your primary stage, secondary stage, higher stage? Were you able to get a quality education to realize your own intelligence? 90% of the people being born in such circumstances are not able to realize their own full potential. And then they are marked by the society as less capable. But you never let them free enough to realize their own potential. So the society is to be blamed for, not the people. Okay. Then the achievement of complete freedom will be humanity's finished growth. Consequently, there will be an end to history Once people will realize their own potential, once humanity's full potential has been realized, there can be no further development. That is said by Hegel. So history is directed towards an end in two sense. One, in the form of particular result, in being directed towards a literal end or finish when the people will realize their complete freedom. According to Hegel, the history will end. Now, what is more important for us is how Marx will pick it up. That's more important. Let's understand more theories of Hegel. So, Hegel's primary manifestation of development is called as zeitgeist or spirit of the age. The mind or spirit, which he terms zeitgeist, he held that if one studied the history of a given people, their art, their religion, and philosophy at any given time would show a certain uniformity, a common cast of mind, a shared outlook. So if you are studying the poems of Kabir Das or Dohas, and then you are reading the poems of Tagore or you are reading the poems of Dinkar, you will find a profound uniformity in terms of shared outlook. This wasn't coincidence. In Hegel's view, individuals were driven by a larger, widespread influences affecting them all in a very similar ways. In short, the mind you have or the spirit driving the historical process is the mind of humanity as manifested in particular peoples and periods, not the mind of individual thinkers. So he's saying that your mind is being shaped by the surroundings and the other factors. In a period of time, you will see when India was going through freedom struggle, you will find a lot of books written based on heroism. A lot of books. And a lot of books were also written to challenge the society and the system. That was the wave. Now you come to the present generation, you will find more and more stories oriented towards materialism and other needs of human, like love. That is profoundly increasing. So the ideas are also shaped by, I'd like to give you an example of music. When India got independent in 1947, till the early 1960, you will find a lot of songs which were trying to portray the pain of human. And at that time of singer, we had so many singers like Mukesh. He used to sing very painful songs. And then comes a period from 1960s to 80s. You will see the Indian cinema, specifically Hindi cinema, and in other languages as well. The cinema was trying to showcase the anger of the young people. They were not able to get jobs. Their hopes were choked. And the songs and the cinema both were reflecting angry young men. Then comes the early 1990s era when the LPG reforms came. And then you will see the movies were more and more oriented to suit the middle class and the more romantic movies and songs were portrayed. And the post 2010, you will see songs have more and more regional vibes. Movies also are showcasing tier two, tier three cities and their stories. So this is how even cinema, even the movies and music are being affected by the general situation. Idealism, so Hegel's study of the mind was the study of the development of ideas. He gave prominence to ideas. So he naturally concentrated on those areas of society that were creative or expressive of ideas, art, abstract thought, particularly philosophy and religion. Hegel is therefore termed as an idealist because he was much and much focused about the ideas. He believed the true nature of history and human existence was to be understood in terms of the development of thought. And then the dialectical logic. No? So, classical truth that a human is searching is sought through discussions, dialogues, and dialectic. So, Hegel modeled his logic on the Socrates method or Socratic method. Discussion originates in disagreement. Two people are there, they will disagree, they will have different point of views. The conflict of oppositions, which spurs the debate, one position is put forward, then countered by an opposing position. The search for truth isn't about standing pat on one's own position. It's about reaching agreement with one's opponent, a middle ground. Now, arriving at a conclusion, both can accept this new position, incorporates element of each of their ideas and beliefs, but combine them into a third new position that is improved and superior than individual thoughts that we studied in antithesis, thesis, and synthesis. In simplified terms, you see there are two parties, there are two sorts of people, left and right. And if they are debating on, say, for example, education, how education should be, left will say the education should be not about culture and it should be more and more about liberal ideas and freedom. It should not be attached to any religious ideas, any ideas which are not rational. The right will say that the education should be totally rooted in religion and culture. Now they will debate and the synthesis will come. Okay, take some good things out of a religion and the customs as well, and take good things from the liberal ideas as well. Let's mix it up and make a policy. And that is what is there in our constitution. You will see Indian spirits as well. Indian Sarvamata Sambhava, Sarvadharma Sambhava also is there. And liberal thoughts and liberal ideas, Gandhian ideas, everything you will find in the constitution. That is a beautiful example of thesis, antithesis, synthesis, and that was happening in the Constituent Assembly when anything, even the reservation. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar had some thought, and then we had Sardar, Vallabhbhai Patel had opposing thought. Then we have Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru had some other thought, and out of that, a new synthesis emerged. Okay, conflict is not only necessary but productive. Now, what Marx did, that's of the prime importance. Hegel is saying idea is prominent. Hegel is giving much and much importance to ideas. Although the Karl Marx was the youngest member of the young Hegelians, Karl Marx inspired their confidence, respect, and even admiration. They saw in him a new Hegel. Yet Marx was skeptical of Hegel's significance as a political thinker. He used to question his theories. He could not accept Hegel's contention that the key to human emancipation lay in the development of philosophy, carrying people to a level of complete understanding of their own freedom, their own nature, and thus to complete freedom through this understanding alone. He did not believe in that. Now, Marx objected and he pointed out this supposed final enlightenment and full elaboration of humanity's progress coexisted in Hegel's own Germany with jails filled with political prisoners. Freedom in philosophy, freedom only in the mind, obviously was not the same as real political freedom. Freedom in mind will not provide you real political freedom in all realms. People are free in terms of their enlightenment, but are they politically free? They might be put behind the bars during the emergency. There were so many poets and thinkers who were put behind the bars. Are they politically free? No. So Hegel is saying this, okay, be free from mind and the history is completed. Is it true? No, it is certainly not. So Hegel's idea of history, Marx argued, could not offer an account of history's progression towards real practical political freedom. If it only resulted in freedom in theory, for Marx, the real history of human development could not be solely a history of thought or history of ideas. It had to be history of human life in the real world, the world of economic and political being. For much of the Marx thinking, economy holded a prime importance because he saw in the society of Germany as well people who owned factories, people who owned the factors of productions like the machines, the capital, the banks. They were the ones who had more privileges. They were the ones who had more power and authority to rule others, and people who did not own any money, own any capital, were marginalized and they were not sharing the same freedom. This was something which was ringing the bells in the mind of young Karl Marx. Now, despite this crucial reservation, Marx initially adopted much of the forms of Hegel's argument. The first is the idea of scheme for history as a whole. This he adopted. Second, history as a progressive development of the true character of human nature, only fully realized when history reaches its final stage. And thus, Marx will also give a utopia. The idea that the driving force of historical change was conflict was again accepted by Karl Marx. That is the dialectical pattern: thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Conflict resolution, further conflict, higher resolution, and history will progress with increasing degree of freedom at every stage, and eventually resulting in a final emancipation of humankind. Now, production and human essence. So Marx's central contention was that it is not idea, but a material. Material means who owns the factor of production, who owns the capital, who is owning the economy, the material. They are deciding the course of history. So it is not idea, but material development that is changing the course of history. Karl Marx said that Hegel's dialectics was standing on the head. I have made it stand on the feet. Okay. So this is how he upturned the idea of dialectics of Hegel, which was profoundly shaped based on the progression of ideas to the progression of material. So Marx's central reservation with Hegel stemmed from the inequality that was persistent in the society. The vast majority of people did not have the same kind of freedom. Now, Marx therefore denied Hegel's view that human essence lies in thinking. He argued instead that human essence is to work. How work? Okay, you love music. You may have innate potential or liking for music. Now, your own ability will be realized only when you will make something, when you will work on music, when you will sing, when you will write a song, when you will play some instrument. Then you are realizing your own potential. So, the human essence is in bringing the idea into a reality. So Marx did not believe just thinking is bringing up the human essence. It is the work, the ability to attach or link your consciousness to your work. This is how humans are different from animals, according to Karl Marx. So animals also eat, animals also sleep and do the similar things like human. But human can attach consciousness and can eat in a human way that is not eaten by animals. He will make the process of eating food different. He will make food in different ways. He can make eating food a celebration. So he's attaching consciousness. That is not present in animals. That is not present in any other being. And that is the profound idea of Karl Marx. He believed anything which is not letting you think, which is not letting you attach your consciousness to your work, is making you blind. And from here comes his prime contention towards religion. Karl Marx believed that throughout the entire history, religion was used by the powerful people and religion was made by the powerful people to subjugate the masses. He gave the theories that religion says you are feeling all kind of deprivation because your past life karma was bad. And it is saying that, okay, if you are showing allegiance to religious ideas and the dogmas, you will have a better afterlife. The past life, your karma was bad. This life, your karma will be good. Next life will be very good. And this is giving a pass to all kinds of uh, the harm done by the subjugation done by the haves or the people who own all the factories. That is why he said religion is the opium of masses, an opium of hope. If your company is not increasing your salary, the owner will say, "I cannot increase the salary. There is your God. Go and pray in front of him. He will increase your salary. It is not in my power." And that person will feel that, okay, yes, he's saying right. God will increase my salary. Now he's continued working for a decade or 2 decades in this abysmal amount of salary. Why so? Because he's blinded by his religious philosophies and thoughts. If anybody is told to not eat food for 10 days, can they eat for the nation, for the betterment of society? But if it is told that you will fast for 10 days and you will reach the heaven, you will be beloved by the God, you will not eat food for 10, 100 days also. That is how the religion is making you and giving you powers which can be gained by someone who is intoxicated. No? People they gain extraordinary powers. So this is what Karl Marx believed. Okay. And in the modern world, he was of the thought that the work you are doing is totally uprooted through your consciousness is not attached. It is uprooted with your consciousness. You are working, but you are working like a robot. You are working like a cog in a machine. You are putting up nails in chair. Every day, 1,000 nail in the chair. Is it giving you any kind of a freedom? Are you realizing your potential? No. You are doing repetitive tasks. There are 50 people. They all are working on minute tasks. So everybody is working just for money. So now the work is not to realize your own potential, you are doing work to gain money. Now work has become a means to some other end. And the work that you are doing, you your hard work is directly proportional to the amount of money that a capitalist will earn. Your subjugation, how much you will be subjugated, how much you will be exploited, will enhance the money that a capitalist will own. And that you can see in the Oxfam report. 1% people having 40% of wealth of the nation. So this is what is the reason of rising inequality according to Karl Marx. Okay. Then he gave a very, very beautiful theory and very important one, which is called as historical materialism. Let's understand in a very brief manner. This is nothing but he's using the dialectics method. Okay? Thesis, synthesis, antithesis. So he says that when the society emerged, there was a primitive communism where everybody was doing similar kinds of tasks and they were free. There was no authority. There were no haves and have-nots. People were doing hunting, gathering. They're kind of communism. People not owning any kind of a private property. There were no master. There were no slaves. There were nobody who was subjugated. So it's kind of a communism. The forests were there and it was owned by the entire community. There was no private property. So this was the first stage, according to Karl Marx, which is called as primitive communism. Why it is called historical materialism? Because he's seeing the entire historical progress through the material realm. Okay. Then comes the slave system. Tools are developed. The people who are owning the tools, they become the master, the others become slave. Now, from here, the origin of private property will emerge. And from when the origin of private property emerged, according to Karl Marx, the patriarchy also enhanced at that point of a time. When the private property emerged, the man became the breadwinner. They started doing tasks outside the home, and the women became the part of rearing and caregiving work. Then another stage was the feudalism. Feudalism, when if you see the Indian history as well, previously the early Aryans were hunter and gatherers. In the later Vedic period, you will see that Aryans started doing agriculture, practicing agriculture. So people who are owning now the land, they become the feudal lords. And people who are working in that lands were the peasants. So feudal lords were having all kinds of authority. Now, all those the titles that you see, the sarpanch and all these zamindars, these are the people who were not just having the lands, they were also having all sorts of political power and the social power. They can issue dictums, they can declare people outcast, and they had so many other powers. And then the society progresses, and somehow science starts coming into the picture, factory starts being developed, and now the power is taken up from the land, but who is having the factory? Who is owning the company? So people who have $1 million or $1 billion companies, they started dominating. And because of coming up the factories, there were laborers. Laborers who were working overtime were given very less money, very less amount of money out of the total earning and profit that was amassed by a capitalist. And he termed it them as bourgeoisie class, the French, and the people who are workers are called as proletariat. Marx believed that capitalism is going on. Why? Because the workers do not know the reality. They do not have any kind of a true consciousness. They are living in a false consciousness. They believe that the salary they are getting their due. Okay. When they will know the profit that is being amassed is directly proportional to the exploitation that is being done, they will unite. They will unite, and then there will be a true consciousness. They will become from class in itself to class for itself. In class in itself, they do not know that they are being exploited. They are not coming together. When they will come together, when they will know the reality about the capitalism, and there will be something called as revolutions by proletariat. They will rise. We will rise in front of the bourgeoisie class. And then he believed there will be for some time dictatorship of the proletariat. And here what will happen? There will be some kind of a chaos. So society will not be working in a perfected stability. And eventually there will be communism, utopia, where people will work, but not for earning money, but they want to realize their own consciousness. There will not be any inequality. There will not be any private property. Everything will be owned by the community. There will not be any state. It will be a stateless, classless society. A utopia that Karl Marx believed one day will come in the entire world. The communist utopia. A hope given to the workers who is being exploited, a hope given to the peasants. From here, the ideas of Karl Marx are becoming revolutionary. He's giving hope to people who do not have money, people who are exploited, people who are living in slums. He's giving hope to them. He's giving hope to the erstwhile depressed castes as well. He's giving hope to the exploited women as well. And he's giving hope to even those who are being affected by the environmental degradation. And they all come together and they are highly inspired from the thoughts of Karl Marx. Okay, this is what he talked about the historical materialism. Okay. Then he was of the belief that every society for Marx has its infrastructure and superstructure. What is infrastructure? What is the base? The base, all the social relations in the society is defined in terms of material condition. As we discussed, that Hegel was very much interested in terms of ideas. Karl Marx said, no, it is material condition which is important. So the economy is the base. Economy is deciding everything. Who owns money, he will decide the narratives which is being spread in the media. Who owns the money, he will decide what will happen in terms of the policies, which taxes will be reduced. Who have the money, they will decide the education system. The education system is molded according to them. If the AI has come, the education is molded according to AI, and AI is being propounded by a few millionaires and billionaires. So they decide what will happen. They will also decide the societal values, like meta. Meta is shaping your values. Meta is shaping how you think. So he believed the people who own, they are deciding everything. So it is the main thing. Economy is the main thing. Every other thing is a superstructure. Your law, your education, your political institutions. And often we criticize that our Indian legal system is made for rich people. You can understand from that. Economy is the base, infrastructure. And every other thing, the values, the cultural way of thinking, even the religion, even the ideas and philosophies are being shaped by the base. So any change in material condition will imply a corresponding change in the social relation. Hence, changes in infrastructure will ripple towards every other thing. This is the central causal relation given by causal means if this will happen, the effect will be this. Okay. If you are adding water into the fire, what will be the reaction? So cause and effect. Through this only he analyzed the entire society and even the history. Material is the base. Force of production and relation of production. So what is the force of production? The force of production are the ways material goods are produced, the technological know-how, the types of equipment is used, the goods being produced. So concretely, this includes tools, machines, labor, and level of technology. Forces of production will have two elements. One, the means of production, your tools, your machines, your factories, and so on, and the labor power, the skill of the labor, the knowledge of the labor, the experience of the labor, and other human facilities used in work. This is collectively called a force of production. Now, the development of machinery changes in the labor process. New machines will come, AI has come, the labor process will change. Robotics will come, the labor process will change. In this sense, science and related skills form part of the productive forces too. Okay. Then he says that the development of forces of production is reflecting humanity's consistent or constant struggle to master nature through labor. They are trying to master, okay, the nature through the labor. In every social order, there is continuous change in material forces of production. Sometimes it is triggered by nature or ecological phenomena, like rivers are drying, deforestation, soil is exhausting, as in tribal societies. So there will be some changes which are now very important, but usually driven by development in the instruments of production themselves. Like computers developed, the computers gave way to your mobiles and smartphones. So one material development will give way to another material development. Then he gives the theory of the labor power and the surplus value. So according to Marx, labor power is the capacity to do usual work that increases the value of product. Workers are selling their labor power to a capitalist for a salary. Now, labor, by contrast, is the actual exercise of the capacity. The category of labor power explains for Marx the source of surplus value. A capitalist invests money to buy goods and later sells them for more than the investment. And this investment is only possible because value has been added. And labor power is precisely the ability or the capacity to add value. Now, the surplus value in capitalist production arises because the value paid by capitalists for labor power is smaller than the value labor power actually has for commodity. So, in nutshell, they are being underpaid. And they are underpaid, and all the money that is being squeezed by a capitalist is nothing but the surplus value. If they are now working hard to produce 50 millions worth of products, the salary that will be provided to them will be very meager. So they are not provided how much they are working. That is that results in the surplus. That the capitalists again invest, again they gain more profit, and the spiral continues. And that is why you will see a few people even having $1 trillion of turnover. The spiral keeps on working, and the labor keeps on getting marginalized. That is what Karl Marx said, that proletarization, garibikaran. In Hindi, it is said garibikaran. People are becoming more poorer and poorer and poorer. Then he talked about the relations of production. So to produce anything, people enter into definite relations with one another. Production is happening in these social relations. So the relation of productions are these relations among people involved in the process of production, and they are determined by the level and character of development of the productive forces. So what are the relations of production? One is the technical relation, which is necessary for the actual production process to be processed. And second is the relation of economic control. Who is owning the property? These govern access to the forces and product of production. So basically, in a factory, there can be some technical relations. Some are engineers, some are workers, some are chief engineers, some are CEOs. But what is the relation of economic control? Who is owning the wealth? Who is owning the share? That will decide eventually the access to the forces and product of production. Okay. Crucially, the relation of productions are relationship between people and people, whereas means of production are relationship between the people and things, people and tools. Let's understand that under capitalism, the most fundamental relation of production is the bourgeois ownership of the means of production. While the proletariat owns only its labor power, they are not owning the means of production. So the implied relation to the worker is one of domination. So they are dominating, they are owning, they are so-called maliks, and you are so-called kamins or knockers. The malik kamin is the relationship which were existing in the Indian history, uh, called as Jajmani system. Okay, Jajmani system was a reciprocal relationship, again based on subjugation. Malik means he's owning the land. Kameen or Mazdoor means he's just on the mercy. He's doing all the labors, but he will get some crops, some produce, and he's working very hard. But he believes that it is he's on the mercy because the land is being owned by the Malik. Okay, there are further classification as well in sociology, which we will read later on. Malik, Kisan, Mazdoor. Okay, then mode of production. So mode of production refers to the general economic institution, the particular manner in which people are producing and distributing the means they sustain for life. Like in capitalism, how the things are produced in a factory, right? Okay. Then how it is distributed? The capitalists are taking majority of the chunks, and a very little chunk is provided to the workers. Okay. The modes of production are distinguished from one another by the different relationship between the force and relation of production. In the slave society, in the feudal society, in the capitalist society, in the communist society, there will be different relationship between forces and the relation of production. Okay, so a crucial dimension is how surplus is being produced according to bottom array. Now, each mode of production has its own uniqueness. Under, if you see the feudalism, the serf's total domination by the lord enabled the lord to appropriate surplus from the serfs. That exact relationship would fall under capitalism. So a new set of relationship develops that instead lets the capitalist appropriate surplus value from wage workers. Previously, they were taking up all the money because of the allegiance of the serfs. Now they are taking up by letting the masses work in their factory, and they are amassing all the profit. Importantly, neither forces nor relation of productions are fixed, and it keeps on changing as we studied in the historical materialism. Okay. So this is the sequence that we had seen: primitive communal relationship, and this is the first and lowest form of human social organization thousands of years ago. Primitive tools and small tools were there, mutual assistance and cooperation, no private property. Exploitation did not exist at that point of a time. Then in ancient slave owning society, so bronze and iron tools were replacing the small stone and wood tools. So large scale agriculture, livestock, mining, and handicrafts developed. So relations of production were based on the slaves' owners, absolute ownership of both the means of production and the slave himself. Because owning the slave is himself. You see that there is a now slave dynasty, Delhi Sultanate. So this system you can see in the entire Indian history and even in the world history. In the colonialism thrived on the slave system. Along with everything he produced, the slave received only the bare minimum to survive. This is where the history of exploitation of a man by man and the history of class struggle truly begins. As productive forces developed further, slavery became an impediment. The slave had no interest in improving productivity since it wouldn't improve his own position. So class conflict between slave owners and slave intensified and then manifesting in slave revolts, which combined with raids from neighboring tribes undermined slavery foundations, giving way to another system, which was feudal system. Now the progressive development of productive forces continued. Human began using inanimate energy sources like water, wind, alongside human labor. Now, the crafts were advanced, labor became specialized, and productivity rose. Feudal relations of productions were based on the lord's ownership of serfs or landless peasants. These relations of dominations were notably more progressive than compared to slavery. They gave laborers some interest in their own labor. They were not like slaves. Since peasants and artisans could own their implements or small parcel of land, they can do their farming. Eventually, new discoveries arising consumption demands from population growth and colonial markets and scientific development or technological advancement led to mass scale manufacturers, bringing previously scattered laborers together in one place, the factory. This sharpened class conflict, sparking peasant revolutions against landowners. The new system needed free labor where serfs were tied to the land. So the mode of production shifted from feudalism to capitalism. And you can see throughout the modern history, there were so many peasant struggles which were organized. That gave way to the capitalist system. So now the large scale machine production defines capitalism, productive forces. There were huge factories, huge plants, mines that replaced the artisan workshops. In century or two, capitalism developed the force of production more than all preceding eras combined. The production reached a very new high level thanks to all the machines. Industrialist capitalists from merchant capitalists now were much stronger. Merchants profit from the price gap between markets being low in one, selling high in another. Now the industrialist capitalists profit from the gap between the labor market and the market for whatever commodity is produced. Marx called it a direct exploitation of the proletariat. But he argued capitalism was prone to periodic crisis as capitalists invest more in technology and relatively less in labor. And since surplus value from labor is the source of profit, the rate of profit would tend to fall even as the economy grows, eventually triggering a recession or depression, which you can see. In the present time, because of AI, also there was a recession or depression, which can be shown because people are thrown out of the jobs. Okay. And that caused a slowdown. Even if the production is increasing, it will cause a slowdown. The global economy went through a slowdown post COVID and post all these technological advancement. Even though they are producing more, still the world is going through recession. He talked about Asiatic mode of production. So, characteristic of primitive communities where land ownership is communal, still partly organized on kinship lines. State power expressing the real or imagined unity of these communities control essential economic resources and directly appropriates them. This mode represents one possible form of transition from classless to class societies, arguably the most ancient such transition containing the contradiction of combining communal relations or production with emerging exploiting class and state power. Marx never left a systematic account of Indian history specifically, and later scholars have argued that Asiatic mode of production concept is inadequate for understanding Indian history. However, when you will read the sociology paper too, you will see some Marxist scholars like A.R. Desai who will again understand the Indian society through the Marx prism. And they will try to understand all the nuances, how history progressed. However, there are a lot of criticism, like J.P. Narayanan says that Marx's philosophical basis is purely material. It is not giving count to religion, culture, God, or change of heart. Its view of human nature is narrow. Man is treated as selfish, acting only according to class interest, while feeling of mutual cooperation, sacrifice, love, and sympathy, everything is neglected. When people are starting questioning their morality or philanthropic tradition, materialism offers no answer to it. So it is something economic determinism. It is narrowing down the understanding of Indian society according to J.P. Narayan. Max Weber says that Weber appreciated that Marx showed how change in infrastructure brings change in superstructure or human relation and consciousness, but argued the reverse is equally possible. Change in superstructure, like religion, can also bring in infrastructure capitalism changes. Like he gave the theory of how Protestant ethic led to a spirit of capitalism, which we will read when we will read the Max Weber theory. Then Gunnar Middle, state and its policies are also important. Independent factors of change, state interventions can also cause change in infrastructure, not merely reflected. State can also initiate changes. State can also bring laws which can initiate changes. A state will say, okay, now we will have socialist mode of production, like 1950 to 1990s India. So everything will change. So state also has power. Then Milovan Digelas criticized Marx as a utopian thinker. The kind of communist society Marx envisioned never actually emerged. And the communist societies that did emerge don't adhere to the Marxian ideology in total view, in totality. On mode of production specifically, It is an abstract analytical concept. In any real society at a given time, more than one mode of production also must or coexist. In Indian society, we will see there is still feudal mode of production. In agriculture, if you go to states like Bihar, you will see feudal mode of production. If you go to state like Tamil Nadu or Haryana, you will see capitalist mode of production as well in Indian agriculture. In any society at a given point of time, multiple mode of production coexisted. Then he gave the theory of alienation. So alienation is simply, since we had discussed about the work was central to Karl Marx. So if I have to realize my own potential, I will work. And naturally, everybody wants to work, but they want to work according to their own consciousness. The consciousness is taken away. If they're just working on similar repetitive tasks, if it is taking away all your freedom while you are working, then it is something which is dehumanizing. And now you are totally alienated. You are working on a very small thing in an information technology company. You don't know what impact you are creating. You are not knowing what product you are creating. You don't know your product is creating what impact. So you are not aware about your own product. You are not aware about the entire production process as well. And you are also uprooted through fellow workers. You many a times you will see in many of the multinational companies, there is a team and people are thrown into an outright competition. The people who will win, they will be given reward. The people who will lose, they will be discarded. So even they are alienated, uprooted from the fellow workers. This is dehumanizing. This is the concept of alienation, which was given by Karl Marx. Okay. A further aspect of alienation is the self-denial of human essence. Okay. So Marx says that there is no God. God is an idea invented by humans, partly to mislead, partly to express unsatisfied longings. By accepting the fatalism, what is happening? This is because of niyati, jo ho raha hai, because of my bad luck. I can't change my luck. Chalta hai attitude. I must have done bad karmas. My God is very angry with me. And you are being exploited by the capitalists. You are being exploited by the state. But you believe that you are suffering because of your own karma. And you are actually fatalism. You will go to the astrologers. You will try to see what which is bad in my horoscope and all of this. And this lead to fatalism instead of realizing or understanding your own capacity or your own capability. For Marx, the market is not a superhuman entity, but merely a set of relationship between human beings. And he gave the four manifestations. As I told you, you are alienated from the product of labor. What you are producing is appropriated by the capitalist. The worker has no control over it. Then alienation from the act of production. All decisions about how production is organized are taken by the capitalist. For the worker, labor ceases to offer any satisfaction, intrinsic satisfaction, and becomes only a means of survival to gain money, to gain salary. A compulsion forced from without, not from within. No longer an end in itself. It is a mean to some other end. You are working to have money. Then alienation from his species being, the real human nature. Man is distinguished from animals by his creative capacity to labor, as I told you. We also eat, animals also eat. We sleep, animals also sleep. But we can sleep in our own human ways. So man is losing this distinctively human quality and becomes estranged from his own species being. Then social alienation. That is, you are alienated from your fellow workers, fellow beings. The prevalence of religion and belief in God as an independent power is itself a result of the self-instingment. The more man puts into God, the less he remains of himself, the less he believes in himself, the less he believes in his own power, the less he believes in his own ability and his own skills. The capitalist system reduces man to a state worse than an animal. No animal must work for a survival at another's bidding. Have you seen a cat working for a lion in jungle or a deer working for rhinoceros? Rhinoceros saying, okay, go deer and do this work for me. I will give you some grasses. This doesn't work in jungle. Why this is working in human being? So, but man does under capitalism, the worker also becomes socially alienated. Social relations becomes market relations, where each man is judged by his market position. Market position means, okay, how market can benefit you or how market can hurt you. If you are a CEO, you'll get more salary. If there will be a boom, you will get more salary. If you are a IS, you will get more perks, more privileges, and you are being judged according to your position in the market relation. That is your status. So people are not more than a commodity. Workers are just a factor in the operation of capital, factor of production. You must have seen labor is just a factor of production. So Marx believed people could be freed from this alienated existence only with the emergence of utopia, that is communist society. So alienation after Marx, later theorists also analyzed this theory. Max Weber analyzed this theory and he disagreed with Marx on the cause of alienation. For Weber, alienation is an inevitable feature of modern industrial society, regardless of whether means of production are owned privately or collectively. This true cause lies in the rationalization of social life and the predominance of bureaucratic organization, which are so much intrigued into the process and not about the goals. So there is an iron cage of rationality. Compulsive, we will read more about this. Don't get afraid by listening to all this iron cage of rationality, etc. We will discuss Max Weber in the next class. For now, just understand that Max Weber did not agree with Marx on the cause of alienation. He did not believe that the means of productions, if they are owned collectively, there will not be any alienation. This is what you need to understand. C.W. Mills argued that the growth of the tertiary sector or service sector in modern industrial societies has contributed to self-alienation among white collar, that is non-manual workers. Skills with things have been replaced by skills with person, which non-manual workers must sell like commodities. So it's like a personality market. Since the personality performed at work is false and insincere, his example, if you want to understand, a department store, saleswomen smiling and attentive to customers' whims becomes self-alienated because her personality itself becomes the instrument of an alien purpose. At work, she's not herself. She's trying to appease someone. She's trying to manage her emotions. She's trying to sell her emotions. Same examples you can take of the flight attendants or the air hostess. They are trying to manage their emotions. Even if you are many of the flight people who go in the flight, they are misbehaving. So she's trying to manage her emotions and trying to act not in this personality market. You must have seen things like soft skill. What is soft skill? You are angry, you cannot be angry, you have to say sugar coated words. This is again a part of personality market. Then Herbert Marcuse, he says that discussing work and leisure in advanced industrial societies argued that both alienate people from their true selves. Work is stupefying and exhausting, while leisure only soothes and prolongs this stupefaction, largely a pursuit of false needs. Okay, so even if you are not working, still it is stupefying and it is also exhausting. Okay, the leisure, so-called leisure, you are given 2 days holiday. That's also something which is stupefying. On the Monday, you have to work more. Melvin Seaman applied a reputational approach, decomposing alienation into 5 separate elements like people feel powerless, meaningless, normless, isolation, and self-estatement. And Robert Bloomer developed 4 of Seaman's condition. Further, he related them into more mechanism and he made U curves, etc. And he says that alienation is low in craft industries like printing, highest sharply in assembly line mass productions like mobile assembling, automobile assembling. There, the alienation is more compared to the crafts. Okay, so Marx's concept of alienation in many ways is a unidimensional explanation of multidimensional phenomena. Different studies have made it more multidimensional. Today, if you see democracies recognize even trade unions, labor laws, and arbitration council exist to protect the worker interest and then constitutional articles as well. There are so many laws as well. And then we need to understand another concept, the class, the concept of class given by Marx. So Marx, in essence, the sociology of Marx is class struggle. So at the broadest level, society divides into 2 major class. One is bourgeois, second is proletariat. Bourgeois haves who are owning the land or capital, proletariat who are have not who own nothing but their own labor power. Okay. Then classes as a relational entity, one class can only exist if there are other classes. A one class society would really be a no class society. And then there is a class interest. The owning and laboring classes oppose interest. The owning classes can meet the condition of its own more luxurious life, more luxurious existence by taking from those who actually create what is consumed. In Marx' view, someone who does not participate in physical production is not entitled to a share of its product, meaning those who don't work exploit those who do. Okay, so this inequality is not narrowly economic. It is fundamentally about freedom, the owning class capacity to restrict laborers' access to the means of economic activity. And then determining class two criteria, as I told you, class in itself and class for itself. So objective criteria, what is objective criteria? People sharing the same relationship to the means of production. For example, all laborers share a similar relationship with the landowner, just as landowner shares a similar relationship with land and labor. Now, what is subjective criteria? Class for itself, where the shared consciousness, you know that you are being exploited. The proletariat is being exploited by the bourgeoisie class. Then it is called as class for itself. This was called by Marx as the subjective criteria. And this is a shared consciousness which will lead to a revolution. You are now aware about your common interests, sufficient to organize collective social action that will cause a revolution. Stage of class struggle. So primitive communal society, no exploitation of man by man, slave owning society. There will be exploitation that will give way to feudal system. Then there will be a way to capitalist system, and then predicted final stage, that is socialism and communism. There will be a first dictatorship of the proletariat, which later converts into a utopia, stateless, classless society, pure communism. The critics of Karl Marx, as we discussed, Weber said that there are not just two classes, proletariat, bourgeois, there are four classes. He said that there is a propertied upper class, bourgeoisie class, then there are white collar workers, engineers, doctors, then we have petty bourgeoisie, small shops owners, and we have manual worker class. So he gave four no, fold classification. On polarization between the bourgeoisie class and proletariat, he believes that in the modern times, we have white collar workers as well. We have managers, which are increasing in numbers. So increasingly, the concept that he said that there will be more and more people joining the proletariat and there will be polarization, that's not true. On inevitability of revolution, Weber rejected the idea of inevitability of revolution. A dissatisfied manual worker may simply grumble, sabotage machinery, or go on a strike. And you can see trade union strike, etc. go on. Revolution for Weber is possible but not inevitable. He's not denying that there can't be any revolution, but he's not saying that it is inevitable, since there are a lot of other mechanisms to express the frustration of labor. On the source of power, Marx located power in single source, economy. Now, Weber identified three distinct sources. This is the Trinitarian perspective of Max Weber. So the first is class or economic inequality. Second is status, prestige. So you see bureaucrats, they might not be a top on the top in terms of the economy, but they are having more social prestige, specifically in certain states where there is not much capitalist development. So on the scale of status, they might be higher, right? And then third is party, that is a political power. Political power also decides that your situation in a society. And Ralph Dahrendorf argued that instead of advancing claims as members of homogeneous group, people now increasingly compete with each other as an individual for a place in the sun. As a result, class solidarity and conflict intensity reduce. He identified decomposition of labor, skilled, semi-skilled, unskilled worker, and decomposition of capital, owner versus manager, both of which fragment what Marx saw as two unified opposed classes. He said that there's a death of class solidarity and conflict intensity will reduce. There will be decomposition of labor and decomposition of capital as well, according to Ralph Dahrendorf. And then functionalist Parson, Davis, and Murray criticized Marxist stratification theory and universality, indispensability, and functionality. So universality, no society in human history has been free of class stratification. So contrary to Marx's claim that primitive communal and future communist society is classless, Parson cites that the Sioux Indian tribe of America, a primitive society, as an example, that was in fact stratified. So no society you will find where there is no stratification, according to Talcott Parsons. And functionality, stratification is necessary for more meritorious people to, or more able people to do more indispensable and more important roles. Like doctors should be skilled, they are more meritorious. That's why there is stratification. They have more important roles compared to someone who is sweeping the street, according to functionalists. But according to Marx, they all are contributing to us, the society. Okay. So if there is an examination and if there is a group examination, the people of group A are enjoying more perks, according to functionalists, it is something which is not exploitation, but it is very much important to make the society function in a proper manner. And then the criticism that actual communism never came in USSR or even in China. However, there is a relevance as well. You see economic level, you see zamindari system, you see the exploitation, alienation. People are being thrown away from the companies. People are even committing suicides. People are leaving jobs. People are trying to open even small shops, driving Ubers, autos, and they are so dissatisfied with the cripple monstrosity which is happening in the multinational companies. According to Karl Marx, you can see the relevance. And due to the greed, there is extreme amount of environmental exploitation, which is also happening. And there is a rising inequality as well. Politically, you can see the powerful nations, nations like USA have more and more wealth. They are exploiting. They are deciding the rules of the world. They are dominating the United Nations. Security Council and everything. Okay, so there is so much of a relevance as well of Karl Marx, and there is so much of relevance in his religious theories and even his theories of materials deciding the other factors. Then, India specifically, to build a democratic socialist India, earlier discrimination based on caste, sex, religion, and race have been formally abolished. So there is a removal of untouchability, abolition zamindari system, reservation, right to education. However, still the caste persists. Still, you can find untouchability. Still, you can find the feudal systems. Still, you can find the zamindars now have become the capitalist. No? So it's just changing one form of another, but they are having all those kinds of privileges. Okay. And the more criticism also you can showcase is theory of capitalist society, inevitable tendency towards radical polarization, self-destruction is too simplistic. We have now more and more middle class emerging even in the Indian society. Modern corporation entails a separation between ownership and control. The capitalists who own the instruments of production are not necessarily the effective decision makers. We now have CEOs, we have CFOs. Okay, so board of directors are not necessarily deciding the day-to-day activities. Then revolution not necessary for change. So today's capitalism doesn't validate Marx. Believe the class conflict is inherently revolutionary or that structure change always requires violent upheaval. There can be organized labor has achieved profound structural change without violent revolution. They can do protests. They can. There are political parties which are raising their voices as well. Then pauperization thesis plot, Marx theory of labor and the deductive reasoning flowing from it, the inevitable pauperization of the masses has proven wrong. If surplus labor value were the only basis of profit, there would be no way to eliminate exploitation and accumulation at all. Yet, in fact, many socialist countries show higher rates of accumulation than the capitalist ones. Okay, so it's not just a one mechanism. An extent of alienation has been also overstated according to critics. Okay, people are now associating themselves with various meaningful groups, like religious, ethnic, occupational, and local. They are not necessarily alienated at that level. And again, the economic determinism. So he's not giving too much of the consideration to culture and religion and other things, and even the state and power. And utopian endpoint as well, the communist utopia. And neglect of non-economic drivers of change as well. Okay, change is a complex phenomena. There will be European Renaissance, you will see ideas as well, cultural revolution as well, political revolution as well, and legal reforms as well, instigating changes. So there can be various factors. And then a note of context has been that Marx was neither a trained scientist nor strictly a sociologist. His historical materialism is fundamentally a philosophical representation of his worldview. That said, before Marx, thinkers like Leibniz, Kant, Comte, Herbert Spencer, Morgan Spengler had already attempted evolutionary accounts of human history, but Marx was the first to explain this evolution specifically in materialistic terms. There was no one specifically explaining the same. And thus, his contribution is immense. He gave new perspective and approach. He talked about class and class conflict. He gave a theory of social change. He talked about alienation. He also influenced other schools like Frankfurt schools. So Marxian idea influenced so many thinkers, C.W. Mills. Now we have Adorno, Habermas, Marcuse. They also further studied the society. Then contemporary use, so conflict sociologists continue using Marxian scheme to explain class conflict, revolutionary movement, environmental degradation, landless peasantry, now landed aristocracy, political versus military elite contention going across the world, populist movement versus conservative revolutions. To understand colonialism, imperialism, they are using this method. T.B. Montgomery, a leading Marxist sociologist, put that Marx's theory of class is not merely a theory of stratification, but a comprehensive theory of social change, viewing society as inherently mutable system where change is produced by internal contradiction and conflicts, regular enough across instances to allow general statements about their causes and consequences. And sociology must have been very poorer without Karl Marx, because Karl Marx gave it much needed passion, much needed agency to even human consciousness, and gave the sociology or the understanding of society a perspective from the workers, perspective from people who are being exploited, perspective from the lens of have-nots. And that is why there is a romanticization of Marxian theories, and that is why Marxian theories has become hope of against the capitalist exploitation And that is why he's one of the most loved and again one of the most hated people who believe in capitalist system and the meritocratic system. They are the ones who also are the ones who hate Karl Marx a lot. So, with this, we are ending the very important lecture about Karl Marx. What I will appreciate is that if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, comment, like our videos, and watch all other videos of our playlist. And also, you can find these notes in Sociology Academy Telegram channel. This will be posted within 24 hours after putting up this lecture. And I hope this lecture helped you a lot. Thank you very much. Take care and best.